All right, good afternoon. We'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, November 3rd to order. And of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, our valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. Councilor Pratt did ask for an opportunity to say something to start the meeting. Councilor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I was just thinking that in light of this being the last council meeting before Remembrance Day, it would be appropriate to have a brief moment of silence.
Okay, I'd like to move the agenda amended to add item E12 as per the clerk's note, and to defer item F1 to November 17th. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a further amendment to the agenda. if
All right,
it's
go ahead.
appropriate. I'd like to move that F1 from the closed agenda be moved to the open agenda, as it does not meet the community charter requirements to be enclosed.
All right, is there a seconder to that?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Richter. Just waiting for that to come up. Does anybody else wish to speak to that? Ms. Bauer, do you have an amendment motion coming up on the system? Okay, there we are. Councillor Richter.
Yes, I'd like to remove item I4.
Well, we're on the amendment moved by Councillor Martins.
Oh, okay. Well, but I want to remove item I4 from Q. So
Councillor Ferguson, did you have anything?
Just a
Speaking
quick
to the Councillor Martins' amendment?
regarding the amendment, question through the chair to the clerk. Is this something we can do or procedurally, if I may?
As essentially it's a motion to add something to the current agenda, then yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think everyone's clear that it's enclosed for a reason. Councillor Bailey, do you have anything to add?
I'm just, can I get clarification on what the amendment is here,
Yeah,
please?
Ms. Bauer, go ahead.
It would be to take item F1 on the closed agenda and move it to the open agenda.
I'm just saying, I'm gonna have a time to look at it, and I'll reserve.
Yeah, so it's obviously enclosed for a reason and don't support the amendment. So we'll call a question on that amendment. And that's defeated with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward opposed. Do you have anybody else on the agenda? Councillor Richter, go ahead.
yes, I'd like to remove item I4 from Q under resolve to closed and also from the closed agenda.
Maybe you could repeat that for me.
I4 under Q
Yep.
on page 14.
Ms. Bauer, is that done during the adoption of the closed agenda, or is that done now? Either or. Either or. Okay, so we'll take that. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Councillor Richter, do you have anything to add?
No, I just wish to withdraw the notice of motion.
All right, so with that, Councillor Bailey, go ahead. Do you have a point of order, or you want to clarify? Go
Just clarification,
Yeah,
is this
no,
a referral?
Nope, there's an amendment to remove item I4 from the closed agenda.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So no, I obviously, again, it's there for a reason. So I'll call a question on that amendment. That is defeated with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward opposed. Does anybody else have anything else on the agenda? Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Bauer, if I have a conflict of interest, and I have received legal opinion on that relative to I-4, how can I possibly put a notice of motion on it on the close?
Mr. Cooner, maybe you're best to handle that one.
Your worship, to Councillor Richter, you would have to be in the meeting to move the item. If you're not in the meeting to move the item, then therefore that would address that issue. And obviously, we encourage all council members to seek any conflict of interest legal opinions if there is so perceived to be a conflict.
Okay, well, we've had this experience recently where I wanted to withdraw a notice of motion, and I wasn't allowed to. So I notified the clerk at 11:22 today, or 12:22 today. I have brought it up on this agenda. When I go into closed, I can't be there to move it because I am in conflict, and I'm going to have to declare a conflict.
To your worship, Councillor Richter, so we would follow the procedural bylaw in the event of that circumstance, and the procedural bylaw does state clearly that the mover would have to be yourself of that motion. So that would be that would essentially address that issue.
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure I understand.
Pursuant to the procedural bylaws, since you have filed a notice of motion and you would not be present, the procedural bylaw states that you would have to be the mover of that motion.
Oh, I have to be there to move the motion, and if I'm not there, it's automatically withdrawn?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay, it's the theoretics that caused me the concern. Thank you.
Yes, we'll call the question on the agenda as amended. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Get a motion to adopt the regular meeting minutes of October 20th, moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Call the question. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Get a motion to adopt the public hearing meeting minutes of October 20th, moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion on B2? Seeing none, call the question on B2. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Go to reports to council, item E1, infrastructure renewal program and policy. I'm going to move the recommendation. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on E1? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move deferral to November 16th, 2026. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on that deferral? All right, seeing none, call the question on that deferral. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E2, proposed 2026 council calendar. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Does anybody have any questions on the council calendar? Councillor Richter.
Okay, so what's in my package is the agenda or the calendar that I guess came to us back on September 15th. So it shows Councillor Martins as acting mayor until April, and then Councillor Ferguson becomes acting mayor from May of 26 to October of 26. Is that correct? Is that what we're voting on?
Sure.
To your worship, Councillor Richter, we are voting on just adopting the council calendar. The council calendar itself just indicates who is a respective acting mayor for the months.
Okay, well, the attention is, I often find in the details. The motion that's on my agenda here says the council approve the proposed 2026 council calendar presented as attachment A to this report. Is that what has been moved and seconded?
That is correct.
So it's the attachment A that's in this report.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to move an amendment that the council meetings proposed for September 21st and October 5th be removed from the 2026 council calendar, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on those two removals? Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, why is this necessary?
Well, it's not necessary unless council determines it to be, but this is consistent with what the last council did during the campaign period.
No, I don't think it is.
You can go back and look, it certainly is. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, can you just repeat your amendment just a little slower so I can hear the
The
language?
council meetings proposed for September 21st and October 5th be removed from the 2026 council calendar.
October 21st and November 5th, 2026 be removed.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, call the question. Oh, Councillor Coons, go ahead.
Is that because we're in a campaign period? Is that why?
No, that's correct. It's consistent with what the last council did as well, yeah, during campaign season. All right, so we'll call the question on that amendment. That carries with Councillor Kuntz, Councillor Richter opposed. Anybody have any other discussion or questions about the proposed calendar as amended? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that what we're voting on right now is the attachment A, where we have removed on page 11, the meeting on October the 6th, and on page 10, the meeting on September the 21st. There's no other changes to that other than those two meetings being removed.
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, just a point of clarification, October 5th on page 11, and then you're correct, October 21st on page 10. The read of the amendment is those meetings will be removed.
Okay, but the order of the mayor that appears right now, with Councillor Martins being acting mayor from January through to May, through to April, and then Councillor Ferguson being acting mayor from May until October, is what we're voting on.
Your worship to Councillor Richter, no, because the calendar itself that's being voted on is for council meetings. So specifically, the vote relates to council calendar and council meetings.
Okay, well, what about the acting mayor stuff?
Your worship, Councillor Richter, that was determined at the inaugural meeting. That is just indicated on the right-hand side of the calendar, just to inform council of that. But the specific vote being voted on is the council calendar and the council meetings particularly.
All right, but if I vote in favor, then what I'm voting in favor of, in addition to the meeting dates, is that Councillor Martins be acting mayor for the first part of the year, and Councillor Ferguson be acting mayor for the second part of the year. That's on this, that's in this attachment A.
To your worship, Councillor, you're correct. It's in the attachment in respect to noting who's the acting mayor, but the actual item being voted on is with respect to the calendar and the council meetings. So that's what council it would be voting on, and that's further referenced with respect to the amendment made removing meetings as well.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question to that is, does that mean that the acting mayor rotation will be changed on this council calendar that we're approving? Will there be changes to it?
Pursuant to this calendar, that would not be, that's not before council, so there would be no changes to it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other discussion? No. Call the question on the council calendar as amended. That carries unanimously. Item E3, pre-zoning options along 200th Street corridor. I'm going to draw council's attention to, there's two recommendations. Ms. Bauer, currently this was deferred as one resolution, so it's back on the floor as one resolution.
The motion was not made to put the item on the floor. It was a motion made to defer it, so there has been no mover or seconder, so it could be placed on the agenda as one motion or two at this point.
Yeah, I see the way that we did the deferral that time. Okay, thank you for that. So I'm going to draw council's attention to that there are two recommendations. I'm going to move the second one without the first one, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion or concerns about the second paragraph? So now I'll call the question on the second paragraph. That carries. Okay, so maybe we'll do that again, Ms. Bauer. Yeah. So we'll go back. Do that again. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. So Ms. Bauer, if you could bring up the alternative motion for number 1. So in lieu of the first paragraph, I'd like to move the following.
I'm sorry, I did not receive any alternative motions before the meeting.
Okay, we're gonna have to call recess then, because definitely intended to send that. Let me see if I can quickly. Great, so I'm going to move the first paragraph under E3 as amended. Ms. Bauer, if you could bring that up, please. No, that's, so on table's been distributed a revised version of P1. Yep, so I'm going to move that on screen. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Brint. Is there any questions on this? Maybe I'll just give a second here. The council directs staff to advance pre-zoning applications without density benefit provisions. Number one, for gateway lands that are restaurant or undeveloped, for remaining townhouse infill sites within Latimer and Carville, as may be appropriate for council to consider, and 4.5 and maximum height of 12 stories for infill opportunities, proximity to 200 Street, the Carville Transit Exchange, and or the Langley Event Center. Is there any questions, discussion? All right, seeing none, call a question on this resolution. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E4, 2025 Emergency Support Services Equipment and Training Grant Report. I'll move the recommendation. Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any questions or discussion on E4? Seeing none, call the question on E4. That carries unanimously. Item E5, 2025 Safe and Active Schools Routes Grant, moved by Councillor Rent. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any questions or discussion on E5? Seeing none, call a question on E5. That carries unanimously. Item E6, capital request for facility equipment upgrades. I'm going to move a slightly amended version to change the funding source. The council authorized the use of up to $135,000 from the Recreation Renewal and Equipment Replacement Reserve for the purchase of replacement fitness equipment, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any questions or discussion on E6 as amended? Councillor Martins.
Yeah, just wondering what approximately even what we have currently in that reserve that we're using. It makes sense to me. It's logical that it would come from there. Just wondering.
Your worship, to Councillor Martins, I believe there's sufficient funds in there, approximately $150,000 to cover the replacement fitness equipment, but I would defer to Ms. Ruff just for the exact figure.
There's 190,000 in there.
Sufficient. Thank you.
Call the question on E6 as amended. That carries unanimously. Item E7, capital request, McLeod Athletic Park. I'll move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Rent. Any questions or discussions on E7? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why we are paying the contribution amount to the Blaze or an affiliated society. Do we have an agreement with them about this?
Your worship, to Councillor Richter, historically there is some licensing agreements with respect to the area. Further agreements will be coming to fruition and brought forward to a subsequent closed meeting.
Okay, but this is basically saying we are going to pay them for it.
Your worship, Councillor, that is correct. And the second paragraph or second recommendation does state that it would be on completion and successful opening of the improvements.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in that regard, I've got a proposed amendment, seeing no other speakers, that council approve the payment of the contribution amount to the Blaze or an affiliated society upon 50% completion of the improvements. They're seconded to that, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. So that amends it to paragraph 2. that upon 50% completion of the improvements, as opposed to successful completion and opening. A little bit faster. Is there any other questions or discussion on that amendment? No, call a question on that amendment. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Now back to the resolution as amended. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, call the question on E7 as amended. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Okay. Item E8, capital approval will be booster pump station retrofit. I'll move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Any questions or discussion on E8? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I had a question on the resolution, being that we're funding 3.5 million, 1.977 is coming from the capital works reserve, and 1.922 million is being repaid from the water DC when funds become available. Why aren't those two numbers the same?
To your worship, to Councillor Richter, so the total project is approximately 5 million, 5.4 million. 3.5 is coming from the water DCCs. 1.9 is coming from water capital works reserve. And then out of the 1.9, 1.92 will be repaid from water DCCs. Since this project is water DCC eligible, however, right now there is only 3.5 million in the water DCC fund, and there's approximately 10.3 million in the water capital works fund, and the water DCC will be replenished in 2026 as the township receives further DCCs. So this is why the payment, the funding source is structured as is.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on E8. That carries unanimously. Item E9, development permit application number 101472. Does anybody wish to move it? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any questions or discussion on E9? Seeing none, call the question on E9. That carries unanimously. Item E10, telecommunications tower application number 0020. Does anybody wish to move that we do not object? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. That the council advised that it does not object. Is there any questions or discussion on A? All right, seeing none, call the question on A. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E11, heritage alteration permit application number 101503. Does anybody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Rant. Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion or questions on E11? Seeing none, call the question on E11. That carries unanimously. Item E12, rural and urban local road reconstruction program. Ms. Bauer, if you could bring up an alternative motion, I'd like to move. There's the original motion in the agenda. I'd like to move the amended motion that council approves 5 million in 2026 from Land Capital Reserve for local roads in very poor condition to be included within the 2026 budget without financial impact to the existing local road paving program. Council directs staff to begin preparations for the execution of the reconstruction program's first year in 26, and that endorsement of a multi-year phase plan to rehabilitate 175 kilometers in poor or very poor condition beyond 2026 be referred to the 2027 budget process. That's seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion or questions on that amended direction? Anybody looking for any additional time? No, is that call the question on the alternative of D12? That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item G1, bylaws for first, second, and third reading, fees and charges, bylaw amendment, bylaw number 6161, moved by Councillor Rent. I'll second it. Is there any questions or discussion on G1? Councillor Richter. Could you please bring down
What happened to F1?
F1 was deferred to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
We're on G1. Do you wish to speak to G1? G1 is on the floor.
Yeah, this is the one about changes to the fees associated with animal control mainly. Did we get input from our current provider of animal control lapse on these changes?
Your worship, Councillor Richter, these changes are in line with the animal control bylaw that was updated historically. I believe it was in July, and as a part of that process, there was consultation done with our service provider.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on G1? Seeing none, call the question on G1. And that carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Bylaws for final adoption, highway closure, dedication, removal, and disposal. Bylaw number 6165. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on I1? Seeing none, call the question on I1. That carries unanimously. I2, housing action, family-friendly units, bylaw number 5994. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Rent. Any discussion on I2? Seeing none, call the question on I2. That carries unanimously. Direct council's attention to the clerk's note under I2. I'll move that resolution, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question on I1. Additional. That carries unanimously. Items from prior meetings, get a motion to reconsider. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Call the question on reconsideration. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. I'll move, give final reading to bylaw number 5897, bylaw 6024, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on final adoption of these two bylaws? Seeing none, call the question on final adoption of J1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Does anybody wish to make a mayor and council report or regional report? Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to say the other day I was privileged to go through the new Hall 5 being built, and incredible. This facility has been planned well. It's coming along very well, and is going to supply not only better service to the area, going from 15 to 20-minute response times, but to 4 to 6-minute response times, and an awful lot of the residents in the area are also going to notice a significant reduction in their insurance rates because of this hall being built and staffed. Also, I'd like to mention, I'm very glad to see the building progressing on the exterior of our police detachment. I remember when I went through right after being elected, I saw some deficiencies. Then mentioned to Inspector Wade that let's see if we can fill in that gap up there to correct some of these deficiencies, as that building was built originally to be able to take a third story, and with the change in the building codes, it's not. But now the progress that's going towards a much needed aspect for the safety of the RCMP officers is underway now that the interior modifications, especially to security, have been done. So very glad to see those two very important projects dealing with public safety and the township being addressed.
Yeah, I would like to congratulate our new councillor, Councillor Blair Whitmarsh, elect, or however you want to say it. And I also want to congratulate or thank all the candidates for running in this last by-election. I believe Russia's here, and thank you for putting your name in the ring as well. It's not an easy thing to do, and it doesn't matter, at the end of the day, I appreciate that people are willing to do that. And anyway, congratulations.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm glad everybody handed out. The ATC stands for Aldergrove Town Center. They actually had a opening of the facility there on, I guess it was a ribbon cutting more, and myself and a number of members of council were there. It's interesting, hopefully everybody's got their cookie from the Aldergrove ATC, is a number of us in the room know about how that facility sat for years and years and years as the old Aldergrove Mall, and finally it was bulldozed, and the work of the Janda Group and in conjunction with some work that we did at the Township of Langley, we've got now a very new, modern, and a great facility for Aldergrove. And I was excited because I remember when the Janda family came to us and said we wanted to rebuild this mall. I couldn't believe it because it was a huge expense, and all the more power. They're visionaries, and I'd like to compliment the Janda family, and all, of course, the work that our staff put in to help them to put in the required zoning. Okay, the next thing on Metro Vancouver, I'll do two at once, is that they had on November the 1st a soft opening of what they call the Widgeon Regional Park, which is up around the Coquitlam area. It's a beautiful facility, and it's going to be done only by registration because they only have so much parking. But I'd recommend anybody coming in next summer or maybe next spring, because as we know, we get an awful lot of rain in the wintertime. It's a great facility, another addition to the Metro Vancouver Park. Very exciting. I have been there myself, and I know that it's a great facility. And the budget was, I believe, Mr. Mayor, passed by the Metro Vancouver. And they have offered, if any council needs a presentation on the budget, I know we've had several, Mr. Mayor, they are prepared to do that. So I just wanted to say there's an awful lot happening within the region, and those are my reports. Thank you.
Yes, I'd just like to echo Councillor Kuntz's comments about the by-election that was held, and congratulations to the winner and to everyone else that put the time and effort into running. I did have a question, though, and I got an email earlier today basically saying that Councillor Whitmarsh will be sworn in tomorrow. And I'm wondering how come he wasn't sworn in today?
Your Worship, to Councillor Richter, the Act states that there has to be 10 clear business days, I believe, before an elected official is sworn in, just due to any challenges.
Okay, so I assume there's been no challenges, and Councillor Whitmarsh will be sworn in. It's unfortunate it's not going to happen at a meeting where he could have had his family here, but anyway, congratulations.
Yes, I just want to say that I think we'll have an opportunity next council meeting to congratulate the winner. Now, he has not been officially said councillor-elect right now, so we'll address that time when he's sitting here in the chairs with us, and we'll offer him our best. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
I agree. I think we'll do that at the next meeting. So, do you have anybody else that would report they wish to make? No? Great. So move on to items for information. Does anybody have any questions or discussion on any item N1 through 10? Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to move a motion regarding N2, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
That council authorizes.
No, we lost you. Don't know why. Go ahead.
The council authorizes staff to proceed with the renaming of the Aldergrove Kinsman Community Center to the Aldergrove Kinsman Arts Center, and authorize up to $10,000 from capital projects reserve that may be needed for signage replacements and or other related exterior improvements.
A seconder to that? Second by Councillor Pratt. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's in line with the fact that the library is going to move to the new building on the corner of 172 and Fraser Highway, and hopefully we will give more space to the arts in the old library space and turn that into a complete art center dealing with Aldergrove.
Councillor Richter?
Yes, I had a question about this. Was the Kinsman organization or former organization consulted about this name change, and are they in support of it?
Mayor Woodward, the former Aldergrove Kinsman Club folded a number of years ago, quite a number of years ago. And at the time, turned their assets over to the township. I think one of the last things was the van that they owned at the time. So as such, there is no association to speak with. So staff didn't pursue that.
Yeah, it's important to note that Kinsman has been retained in the proposed new name.
Yeah, but there's still, I think, a lot of people who live in this community who were active at one point with the Kinsman Center. How could we arrange for them to have input into this?
To your worship, Council Rector, it can always be referred back to staff to have further consultation, whether it's with a specific user group, organization, or just the general public as well.
Okay, then I'd like to make that referral, please.
Could you state the referral?
To refer it back to staff to consult with the public concerning their support for this initiative.
So the consultations with the public, not the Kinsman?
Well, I guess if the Kinsman doesn't technically exist, the members of the Kinsman who live in the community would, I guess, be considered public.
All right, is there a seconder to that?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Martins. Yeah, go. Anyone you wish to speak to it further? Councillor Ferguson.
Have we got an amendment on the table?
This is a referral of the renaming request back to staff.
Okay, well, I can speak to her for, I did want to, again, just double check on something that happened October the 15th, 2025, about, the LHC submitted Langley Arts, and to rename it, and I just wanted to double check, I think the question's been somewhat asked, we'll ask it differently, is, does the Kinsman have any involvement whatsoever in the building or site, or kitchen, hall, plaque, anything whatsoever?
Mayor Woodward, at the time of transition of their, originally the facility itself and their final assets, there was a commitment made that we would keep Kinsman in the name of the facility, and I believe the plaques are still in the facility from the original opening.
Well, okay, so I guess I have to kind of add, the plaque that was there, will that like remain on the wall through the work and dedication that the Kinsman did at the time, if I may?
Definitely would have to look into that and discuss that with the Arts Council, but I don't think there's been any previous desire to remove anything that recognized that name or their efforts.
Yeah. So I hope that, I don't have any problem with this motion. I hope that the new owners or if this motion passes, will leave something or do something on behalf of what the Kinsman has done over the years. I think at one time there's contributions on behalf of the residents in our community. It was a project, I believe, that was, I guess, funded between a partnership between the Township of Langley, Kinsman, and also the community having a volunteer donations and stuff like that. But anyway, that's my question. Hopefully the new owners will leave some heritage renewal or plaque or something like that, education of how this building was built. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that previous question. I did second this because I wanted to just dig a little deeper into understanding this. And if I can, through the chair to staff, you mentioned that there was an agreement back at, with the Kinsmen, that their name would be retained in the name of the premises. Was that a formal agreement? Was that a handshake agreement? If you could speak to that just a little bit more.
Your worship, we would probably have to do a deep dive where this facility was built in the 1980s. And it was 1991 or 1992 that I think the operation of the facility was returned back to the township. And then mid-1990s when the Kinsmen themselves and their society turned their final balance and the van and some other things back to the township. So really taxing my memory as far as what the actual agreement would exist to this date, if it's formal, written, if it was an understanding. But I know that keeping Kinsmen in the name of the facility was something at the time that was agreed to.
Okay, thank you. And then I do recognize that the original motion does contemplate that name remain, which is great. So I feel like they did have their, sounds like the Kinsmen did have their input back when things were being turned over to the township. So I'm all right with proceeding with the original motion, knowing that those discussions have happened. Thank you.
Councilor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I actually remember being at an all candidates meeting in 2022, getting a brief history lesson on the Kinsman Center from one of the candidates, and it was actually very helpful. And I know that it's important that we keep the Kinsman name on the building. It's one word that's changing. It's from community to arts, as far as I'm aware. So I fully support the motion, and I'll be really pleased to see what the Arts Council can turn this space into once they have more space.
Councilor Richter?
Yes, just a question of clarification. We own the building. The Arts Council is the tenant, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, when did any idea when the Kinsman chapter out there folded?
Mid-1990s, to the best of my recollection. And then, I don't know officially on the society and the paperwork, but in terms of kind of their final balance in their bank account, they donated it in a van that was owned towards the youth programming in the Township of Langley, and that was in the mid-1990s.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because if that chapter folded around 30 years ago roughly, I'm quite sure that it would be a very significant task for staff to try to track down individuals within that. So I am not in favor of referral.
All right, thanks. I just want to be careful. So we're referring it back to staff to consult with the public. Ms. Bauer, is that the content of the referral?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so there's certainly nothing wrong with the the idea of consulting the public. The interesting part here is I think the request came from the Arts Council saying that we currently have something called the Aldergrove Kinsman Community Center when we have the Aldergrove Community Center. So I think we have a legacy situation, maybe updating the name. So now it would be the Aldergrove Kinsman Arts Center to be more accurate on what's occurring inside the building. I think at some points we just need to make decisions here. I don't see how this is controversial. However, if it is, I think we would find out later on. But I don't see how it would be. It's called the Aldergrove Kinsman Arts Center, reducing the confusion from what's currently the Aldergrove Kinsman Community Center. So I want to be clear to everybody. We're debating this as if Kinsman's being removed. I want to clear that Kinsman's not being removed in any way, shape, or form. And I certainly appreciate the request from the Langley Arts Council and support it. And don't see the need for spending staff time on this referral. So with that, I'll call the question on this referral. That is defeated with only Councilor Richter in favor. Ms. Bauer, it goes by pretty quickly to catch all the names, but I think we got that. All right, thank you. So is there any other questions on the original motion to grant the request for the renaming with a small amount of funding? So don't call the question on that motion. 02. This is on the original motion. No, this is on the original motion to not refer it. Not refer it.
That's not the original motion.
Correct, but that's what we're voting on.
Being two different things. The one on our screen is different than this one.
Yeah, so Ms. Bauer, you're seeing the reason for the confusion? Yeah, so they'll continue to take it under advisement as we work through some of the glitches on the new system. But you're correct, it was labeled referral, but we had already disposed of that motion. So we're back to the main motion, but Councillor Kuntz, do you not want to? No. Yeah, okay, so we'll call the question on O2, the renaming request, yeah. And that carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have a motion regarding N5. I've
All right, go ahead.
provided it to the clerk, if it's possible.
Ms. Bauer, we're losing people's mics again as well, so maybe you can take a note of why that's occurring. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll move it, and once people have had a chance to review, look for a seconder, or it could be seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Rick. Yeah, go ahead and speak to it.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think this has come out of a lot of staff work, and I want to thank staff for how much time and diligence they put into the memo, and I want to thank the Hub Cycling Group, as well as the cycling community at large, and the just community at large for all the input they provided into this. This is in response to the recommendation in the memo. It goes a little bit over and above in terms of funding to be able to remove a few more baffle gates, specifically all of the baffle gates along the Perry Evans Trail from RE Mountain / Peter Ewart all the way down to 76th Avenue near the new Smith High School and Middle School campus, as well as all of the other baffle gates in and around the Richard Bulpit neighborhood. So this way they will be able to see through this pilot project just how effective the removal of these baffle gates and the retrofit of them with bollards is before we proceed, hopefully, with a plan to, on an ongoing basis, replace and retrofit some of these baffle gates, which are providing some serious accessibility issues to people with carts, to people with strollers, to people with trailers attached to their bikes, and just cyclists in general.
All right, thank you. Councillor Martins.
Thank you. So I appreciate the intent of this motion, and I appreciate the contents of the report. I think the baffle gates, so throughout the community, a large number of them being in North Langley and Walnut Grove, and form the original design of that neighborhood, that community. There's a lot of baffle gates on short stints of trails that are between the homes, a lot running east-west. And this is where I get, sorry, let me just back this up. I want to be clear that I agree that the staggered gates, the way they are now, does provide challenges for accessibility. I have a family member in a motorized wheelchair, and I understand that it's a very real challenge for strollers, for people with bike trailers, and getting around those can be really problematic. On the other hand, the way I see it, especially in North Langley, the purpose is because those trails come and go, and it's all the way along, and they pop out onto roads, and not roadways that are clear with a sidewalk. They're just immediately right dropped onto the road after zero visibility because residents have put up hedges for their own privacy, and you can't see the traffic coming and going on the street till you're on the street. And I do believe the purpose of the baffle gates there is to slow users down so they're not spilling out at full speed onto the street. I liked the other option in this report where you maintain these baffle gates, but you stagger them a greater distance apart, which then answers the issues for accessibility. I just think we need to balance public safety as well into our decision. And when you remove these gates all the way together and you replace them with bollards, there's nothing physically slowing down people, which is the intention of those gates. And it's inconvenient, but it keeps them alive. So I would love to see this change for accessibility purposes, but I think it goes too far just to remove them altogether and throw up bollards. But with that in mind, I have a question through the chair to staff. If you can maybe put my concerns at rest, how, and I'm thinking of cyclists, I'm thinking of e-scooters, e-bikes in particular, that are moving at quite high speeds. how they will be physically slowed down before flying across all these different streets, especially in North Langley. If you can explain to me how that works from a safety point of view.
Your worship, Councilor Martin, just a clarification in relation to your question. Are you saying in the event the baffle gates are removed, or is it currently what is the strategy if for those items that you had mentioned?
Yes, and I guess this is what I'm not clear. My understanding is we're looking at bollards instead of baffle gates. Or am I perhaps misunderstanding the intent of this motion and it's not clear as to what they will be doing?
So I believe staff's understanding of the motion itself is that the first item is once the subdivision development servicing bylaw is being updated, which we're looking at bringing to council in early 2026, that we would essentially use alternative designs for all new barriers locations instead of baffle gate designs. That would be under the TLR 21, so that would be for new, not previous baffle gates that are already installed. And then the second motion there essentially authorizes staff $135,000 to retrofit the baffle gates in their specific locations that are indicated. And then the third motion there is to report to council for an ongoing retrofit of current baffle gates and that are in close proximity to school parks and recreational facilities, and with input from the cycling advocates. So that report to council would be a holistic report that would cover any concerns in relation to safety, strategies, and also be a consultation with cycling advocates and other user groups that staff feel would be appropriate.
Okay, so this motion where it's using the word retrofit, there's not a definition to what the retrofit looks like? That there will be more information coming forward? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because in the report, in this agenda package, there's three options. And one being to remove baffle gates altogether and replace with bollards. That's my confusion here.
To your worship, Councilor Martins, with respect to motion 3, we would essentially look at the options because we're reporting to council and seeing the ongoing retrofits and what would be. With respect to option 2, my interpretation there, and I may look at Councilor Pratt, the mover of the motion, for further clarification, is that that would be retrofitting based on what is mentioned in his first paragraph in relation to for all new barriers. So that would an alternative designs, but to be frank, we just want a little bit more clarification on what option specifically.
And if it's possible, after I get an answer to that question, I just want to hold on to the mic here.
Yeah, no, we can, actually, we're going to move on to the speakers, but in the meantime, Councilor Pratt has actually requested to speak again, so I won't be too draconian. People can speak multiple times if we get this right, so we'll move on and come back to that point. Councilor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about what does retrofit mean? Does it mean removing those baffle gates completely? Or does it mean replacing them with a more effective, safe, updated version? So I guess if we look at the report, option 2 or 3, is that what it means?
All right, so let's get that clarified.
Yeah, like, are we retrofitting all of these? And if we are, what does retrofit
Yeah,
mean?
let's get Councilor Pratt's intent so we know what we're voting on. Councilor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. The word retrofit, I pulled it out of the last paragraph of staff report based on their recommendation. My interpretation of retrofit would be that on a case-by-case basis where safety is a concern, for example, as I mentioned in the first paragraph there, steep grades, exceptional circumstances for pedestrian safety, I would trust staff to make the decision on to whether or not the option is creating more separation between a baffle gate that already exists or to replace with a bollard, which is TLR 22, I believe, is the standard for the bollards. TLR 21 is the current standard for the baffle gates. And so that's why the motion itself was left flexible, so that on a case-by-case basis where pedestrian safety is a major issue, we can be flexible because the reality is that there's going to be some trails that end on a steep slope that even myself, I wouldn't feel comfortable not having a baffle gate there. And then the pilot project that is laid out in the second clause, it specifies only, I believe the count is up to 25 baffle gates that would be retrofitted through this pilot project. The staff identified over, I believe, 447 baffle gates. So we're starting with a pretty relatively small number, and the third paragraph itself would hopefully look to create an ongoing plan, if the pilot project is deemed successful, to be retrofitting these on a yearly basis, quarterly basis, whatever that proposed plan might say, so that we can embed that in. Because as the staff highlighted in the report, the BC ministry guidelines suggest moving away from bollards. Most other municipalities in the Lower Mainland they suggest moving away from baffle gates towards bollards. Most other municipalities in the Lower Mainland do not use the baffle gates or are removing them. So this is just keeping us a bit more in line with some of the other municipalities in the region.
Mr. Cooner, does that clarify it for you? I think it's intentionally intending to leave staff some leeway to retrofit either for additional space, as Councillor Martin's mentioned as a possibility, or conversion to bollard. I think ideally, from my perspective, we would try to avoid having council pick the design for any one location and just fund the retrofit program and let staff take it from there. If you have enough direction to maybe do that. If not, you can always come back, I suppose, in a item for information at a future council meeting outlining what the program will look like before it proceeds. That would be an option as well.
That is correct, Your Worship. I believe the mover has provided some further intention of the motion, and it allows staff now, and that clarification allows us to assess it on a site-by-site basis and explore the options that are presented before council. And if there's any concern, staff will come back to council to seek further direction.
So we'll move on here back to Councillor Martins. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So back to my original question then, if I can through the chair to staff, is if we're replacing baffle gates with bollards, if that should happen, how does that work to slow down users of the pathway that are moving at high speeds? Again, cyclists, e-scooters, e-bikes. How do bollards on their own slow them down?
Through your worship, the bollards there'll be a physical barrier that trail users will see, so they should slow down, but yet there's no physical barrier across the actual pathway to slow them down. It's more to keep vehicles from accessing those multi-use pathways.
Yeah, which is good to know that the vehicles won't be on there for sure. That's another hazard. Okay, so usually we try to change behaviors of road users by environmental design. And like I said, I have a concern. And when I look at the sheer number of baffle gates through Walnut Grove, to be actively working towards removing those in favor of bollards, it's concerning to me. That's not what this motion is suggesting, but I'm just going to say that right now. I appreciate if they're looking at the specific locations and recognizing, like I said, it's a lot of those smaller roads all the way through Walnut Grove in particular. That's the way the entire community has been designed, that neighborhood. And that's all that slows all the kids down from flying through on their bikes, coming and going from school, is the inconvenience of having to get around those gates. And I think we need to balance the needs for accessibility with the needs for safety. That's my own concern. But I'm willing to let this one go through and see where we get on this project, because we definitely need to do better for the accessibility purposes. Thank you.
Councillor Richter?
So in the discussion, I think I heard that staff will be coming back with an updated report. This motion is targeting a small percentage of the total number of baffle gates. So council will be getting a report back on it?
Item 3 does request a report to council. So there will be a report coming back for anything else to occur beyond the pilot project.
Beyond the 25 that are referenced in this motion.
That's right. If you wish to see the pilot project laid out in detail before it commences, I think that would require a motion.
Yeah, well, that probably isn't gonna fly here, but
Councilor Ferguson?
Yeah, I'm learning all about TLR 21, TLR 22. I'm looking up online. There's not really a pitch, there's a schematic diagram of the TLR 22, but they don't have a picture. And I was just wondering, you know, what other communities are doing to replace these barriers, if I may, through the chair. Do you have any examples of other people replacing them and putting different types of barriers in, if I may?
Your worship, to Councillor Ferguson, so staff have actually completed a review of engineering design standards within the Lower Mainland. So some municipalities indicate their use of baffle gates, and there's specifically 6 municipalities that do not include baffle gates in their design standards. Although baffle gates may still exist in those municipalities, they're actually not being a part of their engineering design standards.
So to make a long story short, if I went to Surrey or Burnaby or Coquitlam tomorrow, I'd see a different type of baffle gate, if I may?
Through your worship, to Councillor Ferguson, potentially, and there's several municipalities that confirm they're in the process of actually removing baffle gates as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that everybody's going through this process. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other discussion, any other discussion on the motion? No, seeing none, call the question on 03. That carries unanimously. Is there any other items for information? Oh, Councillor Kuntz, go ahead.
Yeah, and for the Old Deal Dog Park, so it's nice to see that this is going to be opening in the spring. And I know there's a lot of people up in Murrayville area that really love that park. So appreciate that staff recognize that there are quite a few residents there that would like to know if they can keep the two separate, to separate the park. So in the report, it does suggest that we may wish to direct staff to conduct a community survey over the winter months to determine the preferred long-term configuration of the dog park. And if you recall, Councillor Ferguson and Mayor Woodward in the last term, people are pretty aware of what's going on in that dog park, because I think we tried to do something and then the community kind of came out. So how difficult would it be to do like a sort of community survey? Would that take a lot of time and effort?
Through your worship, to Councillor Kunst, if council directs us, as we indicated in the memo, we can definitely conduct that and have that back to council within a relatively short period during the winter months, and then provide the input to council and explore potential options.
Okay, well, I'd like to make that motion then, that we would direct staff to do a community survey over the winter months to determine the preferred long-term configuration of the dog park.
Yeah, is there a seconded? Seconded by Councillor Martins. Do you wish to speak to it any further?
No, I think that's kind of the general idea.
Seeing no other speakers, I'm going to move deferral of that to November 17th, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on deferral? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, why defer?
I'd like to take some time with it. Maybe other members of council would as well. So with that, call the question on deferral. That carries unanimously. Is there any other items for information? Okay, so we'll move on to item 01, a motion from the Agriculture Advisory Committee that council update the rural plan. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation? Motion? Moved by Councillor Kuntz, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion or concerns about that motion? Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I just can't tell you how exciting I am about this. I know that when we went through the rural plan, it was seen as something that's modern at the time and something that went over a very large community. People sometimes forget how large Langley is, and I think that about 75 to 8% of our community is in the ALR. Maybe, I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Chu can answer one of the questions. How much do we have the gate sales of agricultural, if you can remember, if I may through the chair to you?
Thank you for the question. Could you repeat that again, please?
The gate sales, agricultural within the township of Langley.
Farm gate sales.
Yeah.
I don't have the number handy. We can get back to you on that.
Okay, I appreciate you maybe get that back to council, but I know this is significant, and Langley is a community that does do an awful lot of agricultural products and agriculture uses. Our gate sales are significant, and I'm sure Mr. Chu will provide us in the future. Looking at a plan that was done a number of years ago, needs certainly a number of changes, if not to look at it right from the bottom up. And I think this is a good idea. I'm very excited about this. I'm glad that the Agricultural Committee brought this to our attention. We had a delegation as well. So if anybody on this council is excited about this, I am, and I'm looking forward to how we proceed accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I'm happy to see this here as well. And I know it's probably one of the shortest motions that I've seen, that council update the rural plan, but I'm pretty sure that when staff will work together with the Agricultural Advisory Committee and some very educated, interested, and very passionate people, that rural plan will look exactly how people want it. So thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, just one more point. I hope that staff in their wisdom will also look at what Pitt Meadows, what maybe some of our people in Fraser-Valley Regional District and other communities throughout have done with their rural plans, and they can look at it and come up with something that's modern and significant, looking at what other people have done as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. I support this. It's overdue. I just want to know practically how this works, because the motion says that the council's updating the plan. I assume that would be staff. Do we need to amend that or refer this to staff to do so, or how does that work?
Yeah, I have a referral motion coming
Oh,
up.
you've got a referral motion. Okay, that's great. So I'll wait for that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It's definitely nice to see here. The conversation at the AAC is always pretty fulsome, and there's lots of outstanding issues that are of concern to the agricultural community. So looking forward to going through this process and hopefully coming to the other side with a conclusion that a lot of folks are very happy with.
Yeah, great. I'd like to move our referral, that the request to update the rural plan be referred to staff for a report to council on a potential process, objectives, benefits, concerns, update on the current community planning work plan, and a project timeline for council to consider. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. I think that we've seen this term, actually we had a number of community planning work plan items that got replaced, council priorities that were replaced with provincial priorities. And those are currently working through the system that have significantly delayed some of council's priorities from earlier in the term, prior to Premier Eby introducing with his government a number of work items for the township to take care of in advance of our priorities. So while that gets done, a lot of other items have been deferred. So I think it'd be appropriate for council to look at the overall work plan for community planning to see the impacts of replacing one item with another, and get a review of what it in fact may be, what it may mean to update. What are we updating? What would be the reason, the objectives, the benefits, any concerns, and a potential process for that. I think that that will inform council to make a better decision on the implications of advancing a needed update to the rural plan in the context of the overall planning objectives that we have as a council, not just this one item, but a number of items that are in the queue with that department. So that's the purpose of the referral. And seeing no other discussion, I'll call the Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding anything to do with the rural plan, you'll see that I'll be overly excited. I had the privilege of talking with the Mayor of Pitt Meadows, Mayor Nicole McDonald, and she is very, very active in working on asking the Agricultural Land Commission to provide more funding for agriculture uses, for agricultural policies and agricultural issues. So she's there, as well as members of Delta Council. I think it was either the mayor or some of his councillors were also involved with initiatives asking the province to be involved with more agricultural issues. And the same thing, we should perhaps do the same thing with this. agriculture is important, protecting agricultural land with the challenges faced in our community and other communities that have agricultural land, is people want to use the land for other purposes other than agriculture. Thank you.
All right, seeing the discussion, I'll call the question on the referral. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Okay, we'll move on to notices of motion. Item P1, distributed on table, a slightly edited version of that filed motion. Ms. Bauer, maybe best to bring that up as well. And for council, it did highlight the portions that have changed. All right, so I'll move that amended version, and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion or questions on this motion? Anybody wish more time? No? Okay, I'll call the question on P1 as amended. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item P2, public safety revisions for the 2026 budget. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion or questions on P2? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, really glad to see this. When it comes down to staff, when it comes down to fire departments, nothing's more important than timely resourcing and hiring of staff on the floor. What this will do by going to the 8 suppression firefighters will solve a situation where when the firefighters have to enter an IDLH situation, they will be much safer and much more efficient. So by having the 8 come on at one time, it will smooth out the ability to staff properly and safely.
Councillor Martins.
Thank you. This is great to see. We need to bolster our emergency services across the board, so this is a step in the right direction. If I may, through the chair, just get clarification from staff, yeah, if that's possible. So originally, we voted as a council to hire 44 more suppression firefighters earlier in this term, 11 per year over 4 years. And then there seems to have been some changes. So if you can please refresh my memory. So we're just entering year 4. So in the first 3 years, how many net new suppression firefighters have we authorized and hired?
Your worship, to Council Martins, I believe we'd have to get back to you on the exact number, as I believe the hiring process is still ongoing as well. But I'll just defer to Ms. Ruff if she has any further information.
We would have to get back to you. There was some suppression crew, plus we had to get some captains, so some of those numbers got a little bit off of the 11 per year. So I know our intention was 8 this year.
Okay,
Or
so
2026, sorry.
So, okay, no, okay, so you're saying within the hiring, there has been some adjustments being made as far as authorizing then. As it stands now, how many have we authorized to hire this year or this term so far? Or is it same answer?
We were meeting our target of the 44, just the mix of them moved around a little bit.
Okay.
Between the years.
Okay, and forgive me because I am not a firefighter, never have been a firefighter. You were mentioning captains. Is that different than suppression firefighters?
I will defer to the fire department.
To your worship, to Council Martins, yes, on that one, that would be a different classification. I believe that's from suppression.
Okay, all right. So with this additional hire, And once the bodies are in place, how many suppression firefighters will we have hired in this term? Or will we be funded to hire? Understanding there can be some hiccups with the hiring.
I believe, through your worship to Councillor Martins, the weekend staff can get back to council on that item, specifically on how many have been hired. And I believe, as Ms. Ruff has mentioned, we just need to see how many suppression, as it's still ongoing for this year as well. And then depending on what council does with this motion, then we would be able to get an accurate number of exactly how many fire suppression has been authorized by council to be hired.
Thank you. The world I do come from is emergency services, and it's important that we have the appropriate numbers of personnel on duty to properly resource our community on a day-to-day basis, and I just want to ensure that happens. So, yeah, if you're able to get back to me, all council, I should say, that would be really helpful, because I think it's important that we are hitting the mark on that to ensure that our community is kept safe, and we never want disaster or things to happen, but we just need to make sure that we've got the resources in place. And I know we've really worked hard in this term to work towards that goal. So I just want to check that we're meeting it. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. I think for many of us, it's an important issue, and it's good to get some revised direction for staff for the upcoming budget as it's being formed and prepared for council to provide this direction of what council is looking for. I think it is vitally important to ensure that there are adequate staffing resources for suppression firefighting and exempt staff as requested by the chief on a couple of occasions. There have been some additions of exempt staffing as well, which apparently we need to update council on, and maybe some members of the public, in terms of the steps this council is taking in regards to really improving the staffing resources for public safety. I still remember, and I still have the binder in my office, where last term the union had to come to council and beg for staffing. So, I think we're well past that point of what it was like here the previous decade before this council came along, and we're certainly advancing and getting a significant catch-up done on public safety resources to the point where our union no longer has to delegate to council to look for additional staffing resources. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm thinking on the same line. So are we looking at 44 plus 8 total over this term? So 52 firefighters?
No, this would be increasing the 8 that were included in the previous 2025 financial plan. This would be adding 8 more for a total of 16 within 2026, for a total of 41.
So the total is 41. So I wanted to know as well, perhaps staff can provide this, what the total cost of 8 suppression firefighters are, and what's the cost for the additional bylaw officer? And that would be, I guess, an annual operating cost, right?
To your worship to Councillor Richter, so essentially the exact figure per suppression firefighter bylaw enforcement officer I don't have handy. This would be part of the 2026 budget, so it would be a line item, and a cost item would be brought forward.
So we don't have a budget number for it yet?
It would be part of the 2026 budget itself, as this is what it's indicating to add it to the budget 2026 budget.
Okay, thank you.
What the intent of this motion is that there were going to be 4 hired and then 12 later. This moves 4 more up. And when it comes to staffing, and especially when you come to WorkSafe BC's Regulation 3123, this will solve a problem for dealing with the staffing. Again, when you look at the movement that we've had, in some aspects we've moved too fast, and we've created some situations that this will solve. Instead of, and I have worked as a firefighter, and when the term firefighter is used in this context, that includes captains. They are suppression staff, And when you respond on a two-person unit, which would, if this doesn't pass, would be a possibility, it puts the firefighters at extreme risk, especially in an IDLH situation. So this moves a hiring of 4 up a significant amount of time. And I can tell you what the cost of not doing this is. Putting our firefighters, our career firefighters and everyone else and the staff at greater risk. I will remind everyone that the number one killer of and injurer of firefighters is cancer. And I have unfortunately dealt with that situation for roughly 20 years plus now. So I do not want to put my firefighters in this township, in this fire department, at any greater risk. And by moving a hiring of 4 firefighters up a couple of months will help to make sure that firefighters are not put in at risk in IDLHs, and we'll have a proper response as we've been doing since we got the revision of this fire department on.
Yeah, appreciate that, Councilor Peeling, getting used to the new system still. I think it's, this happens a lot with this council. We update direction mid-year for the budget, and we do that quite a bit. I think, seeing some of the previous decisions to renovate Hall 3 for some service expansion there in Aldergrove, along with additions to Hall 4 and along with the new Hall 5, as these things, are funded and approved and start to get complete, the fire chief communicates, hey, we've got some issues here with some staffing. So this accelerates some of the direction that you see in this motion. It's great open communication with everybody involved that just shows iteration, and of course, if we see some in the community that capitalize or, misinform or just don't understand maybe the new process that we have here, I'll leave that to them to explain. So with that, I'll call the question on P2. That carries. Councilor Richter opposed. Item P3, Peter Ewart School Zone Extension. I will move that, seconded by Councilor Pratt. Is there any discussion or questions about P3? Seeing none, call the question on P3. That carries unanimously. Councilor Bailey, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to move.
Oh, there you go.
I'd like to move P4.
Yeah, so they've changed my buttons here. I've got to get used to these here. So there we are. Seconded by Councilor Pratt. Go ahead, Councilor.
So the reason for this and the $7,500 approximately is because previously the Remembrance Day ceremony organizers used to have a traffic cost of around $2,500. Because of Lapu Lapu and increased security in that, they got a bill this year from the traffic security people for around $7,500, a $5,000 increase. And they had no opportunity to be able to plan, react, or fundraise for that. So by covering the cost, what it enables is not only to cover the total cost of the traffic this year, but from talking to some of the organizers, they try to budget the year in advance. So the money that they were budgeting for this year that will be covered by this motion will help them adapt to a higher cost in the future years. Let's say instead of $2,500, they will have roughly $5,000 put aside and will greatly improve their ability to cover that cost. This is at the request of the organizers of the Remembrance Day in Fort Langley, and I thank them and fully support that we cover the costs and give them an ability to be able to react for the future.
Councilor Martins?
Thank you. Yeah, I fully support this motion. I am just wondering on the last paragraph where it says, be it finally resolved that following this year's ceremony, staff will engage with all organizers of Remembrance Day events to discuss future funding considerations. I'm just wondering about the 2 other Remembrance Day events happening this year. If there's an opportunity for additional funding, perhaps they haven't been as proactive on this one as the Fort Langley Remembrance Day, but perhaps they're facing the same issue. If we could maybe, I don't know, remove the word future or just include in it, to see if they, if this, also caused the same issue for them, that's all. Or how that looks, or perhaps the mover has already spoken to the others. I just want to make sure that they're not missed in the mix for, this year's funding.
Yeah, so I've, to let everybody know, I'm working on a notice of motion probably for the 17th, no later than the 3rd, dealing with cost increases that many events are dealing with around traffic control and the increasing in requirements around traffic safety and public safety at events that involve high volume of crowds or road closures. The process around that, I think, has moved beyond, even, competent, great organizers, because the technical requirements, the costs involved, and the shifting process that staff currently have, or maybe it doesn't get approved until just before the event. So I think there's going to be some reforms needed next year to improve this for everyone. I think this year is sort of headed in the right direction of working with event people to get that feedback, to see what they need from the township to execute their events and get these approvals, far before the event itself.
Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that's coming up. I was aware that staff, I think, have been working as well on changing our requirements based on the recommendations from the provincial government following the Lapu-Lapu tragedy. So that's excellent. And I guess perhaps if the other organizers after the fact for this year's events find that they also had a financial burden because of this, perhaps we as a council can consider retroactively if they should come forward. For Murray, I'm thinking Murrayville and Aldergrove. So.
Yeah, I think the process itself for next year especially needs reform, needs some attention to help people execute these events, where we don't want to see parades be canceled because the events, the requirements are what they are for public safety, and that the township is here to help these events execute, not as a barrier. So I am working on some of those discussions, and I think we're all on the same page there with the need. Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, if it's just a quick question, first of all, I support this wholeheartedly. If I may, through a chair, maybe somebody from the staff might be able, did the provincial government or somebody else in authority put together a new safety and security requirements recorded for, I guess, events?
To your worship, Councillor Ferguson, the provincial government has provided some guidelines and framework, and there's a study that we are reviewing internally. The RCMP is also reviewing it, so is the fire department, and that has to do also specifically with event safety, and obviously some of the now cost with respect to traffic control, enhanced safety and security measures do increase because of the concerns that have been expressed through this study released by the province.
It's unfortunate because I think over the years, being not just because of Lapu-Lapu, but because of funding and extra costs for security and safety and road movement and other things. I know that the city of Langley had some fantastic events. They had their own parades. They used to be great parades. The city of Langley had it on a nice sunny June afternoon, or I guess morning, afternoon. A great, that was one example. Another example, they had a cruise-in for years and years. I mean, it's not as good as the cruise-in we have today, of course, in Aldergrove, but they had a fantastic cruise-in, and they actually had a motorcycle displays, which they don't have so much. They don't have room. Too successful in Aldergrove, but it just, the number of those no longer are happening in the city of Langley, because I guess the cost for security, for RCMP, for other things, traffic people, and it's happening more and more. And I know that the folks from Fort Langley, they saw these costs, and it was a kind of a late minute, last minute. I appreciate Councillor Bailey bringing this up, to be able to, we don't want to cancel Remembrance Day. So I'm happy to see this here, and the volunteers and the people that put it on will be moving forward with this. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, one of the reasons Fort Langley has come ahead with this, they've got a ringer in this project. They've got Inspector Wade, and he understands, after his very lengthy career with the RCMP, he understands the need for for updated security measures. In Fort Langley, they went from 4 total closures, street closures, to 9. And with the difference between anyone else in this is, asking staff, there has been no other requests. And I haven't seen, poking around a little bit, any other extensive change in their plans. Okay, so if there is, that's why that's put down there. I have got Olive Grove Legion at top of mind when I put that last resolution in there. And going forward, they may have to change also because of Fraser Highway. So, I respect Inspector Wade and his opinions when it comes to safety and especially organizing traffic security. So that's why I think Fort Langley has come ahead. They have not only got the best person doing this, but they also have the largest amounts of changes. Going from 4 to 9 is pretty significant, and that's the reason for a $5,000 increase. So definitely, if the other ceremonies need that in the future, that's exactly what the last clause is about.
Yeah, seeing no discussion, I'll call the question on P4. That carries unanimously. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. I'd like to move the motion as written.
Seconded by Councillor Ritt.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited about this one. This has come out of some community engagement, and one of my favorite pieces of the potential Friendship City Agreement would be the educational component. The delegation has expressed interest in having homestay students come here and invite homestay students to visit to Korea, which I think would be fantastic and just a small token and a small piece of what could potentially come from this Friendship City Agreement.
Yeah, thank you. I know, appreciate you taking the initiative on meeting with them and getting it to this point and working with the organizer, Mr. Chang, and a few others that I know are pivotal in that. This is actually first brought to me by Councillor-elect Whitmarsh, and certainly appreciated him passing on the letter personally. And so, again, thanks to Councillor Pratt for working with them to put this together for them and for council and for the township. Councillor Richter.
Yeah. Well, I think having partnerships with other governments is a great asset. And certainly it would make sense in the context of a Korean city because of our growing Korean population in Langley. But the way this has come about is not exactly the way we've done it in the past. And in the past, we had relationships with a city in the Philippines through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And the relationship was formalized. It was overseen by the FCM. It went on for several years, over 2 terms. And it did have a cost to it. Now, some of those costs we got refunded from FCM. But I'm curious on this one. Who wrote this particular agreement that's in front of us? Is there a relationship that we have with another organization or a higher level of government that is providing oversight on it? And I'm thinking, for example, FCM or maybe UBCM. So question number 1, who wrote this particular document?
Your Worship, to Councillor Richter, this document was provided, I believe, by the representatives of the Republic of Korea. With respect to question number 2, FCM or UBCM or any other government is not involved in this specific Friendship City agreement or arrangement.
Okay. And do we have a policy or a procedure that governs how we handle friendship programs? Like, for example, I believe the city of Vancouver has a policy or a procedure on that. Do we have one?
Your worship, Council Rector, no, we do not have a policy presently with respect to this.
We do not, so no policy. And is there going to be any cost associated for us? Like, for example, are we going to be sending members of council or staff members? I know that when we had relationships with the Philippines through the FCM, we had our fire chief, our bylaws chief, I believe even our engineering chief went to the city and gave them advice on how to improve their current operations. Are we going to be doing something similar here? In the sense of what are the costs to us going to be?
Dear worship, Council Rector, specifically with respect to this Friendship City Agreement, it doesn't speculate any further cost associated unless there's specific direction given by council, or if there's any request made by the Republic of Korea in relation to any programs or exchange or
Well, for example, we're doing a luncheon, I guess, and a signing ceremony has been scheduled for tomorrow. Who's paying for that? Are we paying for that?
through your worship, Council Rector, with respect to paying as in, need a bit more detail in relation to the food being provided, or is it the venue? Or
Okay. Councillor Pratt mentioned homestay students, which I think is more in the jurisdiction of the school board than in our jurisdiction. So maybe it's better, if that's going to be a focus of it, that the school board be approached. I just think, like everything else, it's due process has to be followed in something like this. And I am concerned that we don't have a due process, or we're not even following a due process. So while I applaud the initiative, I think we're putting the cart before the horse, because we haven't really determined any parameters from our side through policy, procedure, costing, etc., that allow us to utilize the opportunity to mutual benefit. So I'm really sorry, but as much as I welcome the idea, I can't support it. Process has to be followed, and I'm concerned it has not been followed. Thank you.
Councilor Ferguson, go ahead.
Well, I guess you don't have to sign a friendship agreement to be a friend. But in this case, rather than the cart being before the horse, they are here. They are here. And tomorrow there's a ceremony at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at Gapyeon Stone, which is a sponsorship between Gapyeon and the Township of Langley at the Devil Day Arboretum. They are here. I think this is another great opportunity with the Township of Langley, with a partnership or a friendship agreement with the city of Gwangyang. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly or not, but I'm going to, again, go in the history books where we had an excellent partnership with the Philippines, San Fernando in the Philippines, where under Mayor Alberts, I believe that Councillor Kositsky and I believe Councillor Long went over. They came over here and met with us, and they talked about a number of partnerships in which they worked on. It was a great working relationship between San Fernando and the Philippines, and that is still talked about today from members of the Philippine community that live here, right here in Langley. And when the Lapu-Lapu, they came here, they brought a flag, and we had a minute silence, so we talked about that within their community. A little later on, under Mayor Froese, I had the privilege of going to Hatin, a partnership with CSIS, where the Township of Langley wasn't really obligated to pay that much. CSIS paid for the program, but That included partnerships regarding community safety, zoning matters, recreation, and other things. Of course, as I said to them, it wasn't in the Vietnamese, but I said, well, we don't have too many hurricanes here. They just kind of laughed about. That was an excellent partnership. We went there and they came here as well. And now I think it's an opportunity for us to continue with these partnerships. It's a win-win for Langley, win-win for BC under these, and Canada under these difficult times. The more partnerships we have, the more friendships we have, the better we are as Canadians. Those are my points, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Martins?
Thank you. So I concur with Councillor Ferguson and with regards to friendship, and I think the importance of these connections. Because we don't have a report in terms of reference or a framework for this, and yes, we have these events happening tomorrow, but this seems to have come to my attention only through a calendar invitation on some of these other events, and now seeing this agreement. And I would really appreciate learning a bit more here. If I could indulge the mover, I heard the education agreement is a benefit. It would be great to hear just a few practical examples of what this means to be a friendship city, just to help me with understanding this concept better. I'm supportive of us entering into a friendship agreement. I just like to know what that means.
Councilor Pratt?
Yeah, thanks, and I appreciate the question from Councilor Martins, and happy to go into it a little bit. I believe, and I could be correct or incorrect in my remembering of the relationship with San Fernando in the Philippines, but I believe that was a formal sister city relationship, which is different from a friendship city. Sister city comes with formality, it comes with potential costs. It is a formal framework that these two cities would be working towards accomplishing. The friendship city, the agreement is effectively an agreement that, hey, we're going to look into this. We're going to set the parameters. We're going to set the conditions, as I believe Councillor Richter or I can't remember the word that was used, but we're going to set the parameters of what a sister city relationship might look like if that's the desired outcome. And in terms of for example, the homestay example that I used, that came up in casual conversation with one of the delegates. By no means is it a foregone conclusion, but in the sort of first clause of the agreement, it says, both cities, in the spirit of mutual benefit and equality, shall actively promote exchange and cooperation in areas that can contribute to the development of both cities, including education, economy, culture and the arts, tourism, and other related areas. So education is just one piece amongst many that this agreement could start the ball rolling on formalizing with the city of Gwalyang, and as Councillor Richter mentioned, the large Korean population that we have here in the township. So there's no anticipation of this being a agreement at an end in itself. This is the beginning of the relationship in a more formal direction, but by no means is there any foregone conclusion.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, and to add to this, and I agree with Councillor Pratt on this less formalized thing, we do already have significant interaction, and it's not, I believe, a coincidence that we're going to be doing that signing tomorrow at the Derek Doubleday Arboretum where the Gapyong stone is, and that is the first of 6 stones that were put in Canada to commemorate the very significant relationship that was built because Canadian soldiers fought off the Chinese soldiers over a period of 2 days and saved an awful lot of lives with the Korean soldiers. So I'm all in favor of this, having been a participant over the last 3 years, I believe it is, with the ceremony in April recognizing the Battle of Gapyong. And this, I think, is just moving that relationship one step further. And thank you to Michael Chang for his efforts dealing with this kind of organizational agreement, and also for bringing these two communities, the Canadian community here in Langley and the Korean community in the areas around Gapyong, to keep that alive, because that was in the early 50s of that battle. And I was very lucky to be there yesterday, meeting the mayor and the rest of the delegation, and I look forward to tomorrow being at the Gapyong Stone to sign this agreement.
Councilor Pratt, did you have more to add?
Yeah, I just wanted housekeeping. The Gapyong visit in the morning, I'm looking forward to that as well. The signing itself will be at the Langley Event Center.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I just find it interesting, you know, people are suggesting this is somehow a surprise. There was a meeting last November, if I recall the month, where this was floated. They came and met with us, and so this has been in the works for a long time. So I'm not sure where the surprise would come from in regards to the calendar invite comment. You know, I think we see these feel-good things, and I appreciate it very much. It being brought to me the way it was, in the spirit of some good collaboration. Really working with, you know, some people in the community that wanted to see this happen. It doesn't have any cost to it. You know, you're not really going to create a large process for something that maybe happens once. So again, if there's a good thing happening in the community that you have to find a reason to vote against it, you would usually raise the process. Let's criticize the process. The process here was, I think, pretty fabulous and pretty great, and I appreciated everybody who helped make it happen. So with that, I'm going to call the question on P5. And that carries. Councilor Richter opposed. Is there any other business? Not seeing any. Is there anybody wish to add an item to special closed? Seeing none, get a motion. You want to add an item, Councilor Ferguson? Go
It's
ahead.
legal or or something,
Legal item.
or something. Legal or policy.
So Councilor Ferguson would like to add something. Ms. Bauer? No, can't add something? You would like something specific?
We have to cite the section of section 90,
So is it legal, Councilor Ferguson?
I guess so.
Okay, so it's legal, Ms. Bauer. All right, so get a motion to resolve into special closed. All those in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Get a motion to terminate. That's carries with Councilor Richter opposed. Get a motion to terminate. You were opposed as well? Yes, we are. So get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councilor Bailey, seconded by Councilor Rinn. All those in favor, opposed, carried, and let's resolve. Let's appear and close at 3:45.